Well, I think we should get this party started, Dan. I do want to start off saying thank you so much to Emily, Tyler, and Brennan for joining us and for
Here,
Dan
here.
for taking point on this. I'm going to also share a link to a blog because what's great is that Tyler, who is performing in our the Two Gentlemen of Verona, there's Tyler, is a past SF Shakes camper, which is just
Ah,
amazing and wonderful and a great connection. And I just love that. Um, and without further ado, I'm going to send this over to Dan, Emily, Tyler, and Brennan to have a conversation. And if you have questions, put them in the chat and I will uplift them towards the end. But thank you again, y'all, for being here.
wonderful. Carla, thank you very much. And I want to just offer my personal thanks to Emily and Brennan and Tyler for joining us this afternoon. But even more importantly, for the literally really wonderful work that they are doing in this production. This play, and there will be some modest spoilers in our discussion for those of you who have not yet seen the production. Many of you probably have already seen it, and so you'll know what I'm going to say, which is that this play really revolves around the relationships between four people, two young men and two young women, and their sort of shifting allegiances, alliances, and their moral and intellectual development as the play goes forward. And these four young actors have done just a terrific job in this production. It is usually thought of as one of Shakespeare's very early works. It may even be his first play, although the exact sequence of his writing is still a matter of scholarly dispute. But it is both an early play and in many respects it's considered a problem play because it raises some issues and leaves them in some ways leaves the audience unresolved about some of these issues, and the acting that goes on with these four excellent young actors really takes us a few steps even beyond the text. And we'll be, oh, hi Chanel, how are you? And we'll be talking about that as we go forward. One of the things that I thought would be fun for our friends and supporters who've joined is to start by kind of helping and listening to Emily and Chanel and Brennan and Tyler about the way the production began. And I had the great privilege of sitting in our garage on Davidson Avenue at the table read, which was the very first time that the cast got together and actually read through the play. And I think one of the things that I really was very curious about, and I'd love to hear from Emily and from Brennan and from Chanel and from Tyler, uh, what their response was to the table read. What did they learn from the table read? What were the things in the table read that surprised you? And what are the things that wound up sort of moving from the table read into your later performances? So let me start with Emily. Emily, what did you take away from the table read?
I mean, I think my biggest takeaway from the table read, honestly, was that this was, as I hoped it would be, going to be a very collaborative process. We all got to, um, I think that Eli spoke the least as the director, and
Right.
um, we all kind of got to discuss all of our points of view um, about the script. We formed really, really tight connections with each other. And it, after that week of reading, I sort of decided that I wasn't going to do any prep before we started rehearsals
Mm-hmm.
because because I wanted to be influenced by what everybody else was also going to bring into the room.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. I was like, oh, this is an ensemble piece. Like I want to be, um, I don't want to make any of my own decisions before I get into rehearsal with these guys.
Brennan, what about you? What was surprising to you in the table read, and what were the things that you wanted to take away into the production?
Well, I think going in, I was really attuned to the sort of problem play aspect of this
Right.
show. And honestly, I had some trepidation going in because the play as written does not solve for any of the issues that it
It doesn't.
throws at the audience 5 minutes before the end of the play.
Right.
Um, and so I think the fact that, and I was, I think, not the only one who was going in with like a mentality of like, okay, so how is this group of people in this production going to solve for a problem that Shakespeare caused for us hundreds of years ago?
Right.
Um, and I think uh, the group really put their heads together, and there was so much good discussion and so much collaboration. And I think that helped. I think it really brought us together as a group, as opposed to just a show where it's like, well, the script is the script, and we just do what we do.
Right.
We were all sort of actively sort of doing the Rubik's cube together,
Right.
which I think brought us closer as an ensemble.
Chanel, how about you? I mean, you and Emily, in some ways, are the most burdened in some respects by the problems in the play, and particularly by the challenges in Act Five. What was the table read like for you? What were your expectations when you came?
Yeah, but this is my first Shakespeare ever. And
Hmm.
so I came into it feeling just like a little intimidated, like the natural intimidation of, well, am I walking into this room full of like hugely experienced people, and am I going to be like the odd man out and not knowing at all what's going on? And then on the added layer of, this is not one of his more more frequently done scripts. Like I only knew kind of a little bit going in, and then I came out of the table read sort of feeling a lot like Brennan and Emily have said, just feeling really sort of bonded both with the group and the work. And I think part of it was how much we as a group got to decide how we were going to do it and how we were going to take this script that could be hugely problematic to do in
Right.
2025 and making it something that makes sense in this era. And also just it was a group that we sort of meshed instantly, which was really helpful. That doesn't always happen at a table, and it did, and kind of immediately. And so that was super helpful with a work that could have otherwise been really difficult or really scary. And I came out of the table read not scared at all, just so excited. I felt just like up here, I felt equal. I didn't feel like, oh, I'm the little kid who doesn't know anything about Shakespeare. I came out feeling like this is going to be something really special, and it has been.
Well, Chanel, I have to just say, as as somebody who's deeply engaged with the Shakespeare Festival here in San Francisco, hearing you say those things just fills me with joy, because this is what we're really aiming for our players, our directors, our audience, our tech staff. We really are committed to including everybody in Shakespeare, and that there's room for everybody in Shakespeare. And you really took this in such a wonderful. I mean, your work in Act Five is wonderful.
Yeah.
It's really very good. Tyler, what about you? You have in some ways one of the most complicated challenges at a table read, and in Valentine's role. What did you take away from it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me at the table read was similar to what Brennan said, was I immediately was so aware and trying to acknowledge all of the problems, especially in Act 5, that come with this show. And it was really beautiful being in that space for that week, being able to sit down with these people and just sit down. Like, I mean, I think we did some work on our feet, but barely any. We had such a huge, amazing opportunity for a whole week, months before we ever started rehearsals, to just sit down and talk. And it was beautiful being able to hear the other voices in the show, and being able to hear the people that I'm going to be working with for the next, however many months.
Yes.
And it was just very comforting having that week to just talk about how, yeah, there are very, very serious issues with this script. And we are going there certainly are. And we are going to approach it in a way. And this was the best part, I think, about the script workshop. And the part that was the most exciting was that there was such Eli and Eli relayed this to us, and it really gave us this comfort that we were going to approach this script, and we were going to approach all of the problems not in a way that hides them, not in a way that kind of ignores the issues, but instead kind of faces them head on, exposes them, targets them, and leaves people. We didn't want to hide anything, and that was really comforting, knowing that even though we did have our work ahead of us, there was something really comforting knowing that we weren't going to, because you can't, in 2025, you can't hide away from those things, especially if you're going to be doing The Two Gentlemen of Verona. It would be a disservice to ignore that stuff. So that was the most exciting part, and just being able to meet the beautiful folks that I would grow to love dearly.
Yes,
it was incredible.
It's so, one of the things that, this is just a passing comment, but it's really an interesting comment to me, as a sort of a certified Shakespeare nerd. I love hearing you guys refer to the play as the script. There is just this living embodiment of a play that was written more than 400 years ago is now a working script for a bunch of enormously talented young actors. And I just love hearing what in, sort of Shakespeare nerd circles, people will talk about as the text. I love hearing it referred to as the script. That's just it's such a vital way of looking at this. And it's one that is just, it bespeaks the wonderful work that you guys have done in actually connecting with audiences. And, one of the things that's much under discussion in the Shakespeare world at the moment, and is really the subject of a new look in Shakespeare scholarship, and that's the question of what Shakespeare's relationship to Christopher Marlowe was at the early part of Shakespeare's career. And the Oxford Shakespeare edition has now actually listed Marlowe as a formal co-author in the 3 Henry VI plays. And there is now a growing scholarly consensus that Shakespeare and Marlowe worked together, at least at the very beginning of Shakespeare's career, where Marlowe was the shining star in the Elizabethan theater after Tamerlane and Dr. Faustus and the Jew of Malta. And Shakespeare was just beginning. Marlowe they were exactly of an age, but Marlowe was a decade ahead in theater experience at the beginning of Shakespeare's career, long before Marlowe's untimely murder in 1594. But one of the things that's interesting about that is, and that scholars are beginning to really comment on, is that Marlowe broke some new ground in his plays, which, and you can really see the fruits of that groundbreaking work in Two Gentlemen of Verona in some very important ways, not just in the language, although Marlowe's use of blank verse was itself transcendental and revolutionary, and even in the beginnings of the Elizabethan theater. But the self-conscious villain who appears in a couple of Marlowe's plays, both in Tamerlane and in Dr. Faustus, the idea of a character on the Elizabethan stage being self-conscious enough to talk about what he's doing. And, when I see Brennan's terrific characterization of Proteus, and Proteus is sort of understanding as he goes forward in this play that he's doing really bad things because he wants to, and he wants to, he's got an object in mind, a self-interested object in mind, but he's very conscious of the fact that the things that he's doing to get there are really immoral and bad and traducing his long love and friendship for Valentine. And to me, that really brings to mind this idea of the ways in which Shakespeare learned from Marlowe and the ways in which their careers at the very beginning of Shakespeare's career in the theater were really intertwined. And I wanted to sort of ask Brennan about that, about how his, how you've approached that emotionally as an actor, basically, not only doing bad things, but being conscious of it and telling the audience about it as well. I'm eager to hear your thoughts as the performer in this regard.
Yeah. I love playing Proteus specifically for those reasons, that like his journey is so clear, like, and spelled out, and like, we see him go from this like shiny, happy, big puppy dog in love, to this like man who is like broken by the weight of the sins that he has committed against the people that he cares about the most.
Right.
And that's an incredible arc to get to do. Um,
Which
and I
is
think,
such an interesting observation. I'm just going to interpolate there, because one of the things that's the most striking and the most attractive in your performance is that you manage to convey both the sins and the fact that these are the people that he cares about the most. That's such a wonderful duality in the way this is presented in this production.
thank you. I appreciate that. I think that that weight uh, is uh, is, I think, the sort of main question of the show, of like, what are we willing to do in the name of love, and like how do our sort of conflicting responsibilities and like levels of care for the people around us change, when you put the idea of love into the equation, right? Because Proteus has his, sort of brotherly love and honorable love for Valentine, and he has his sort of like, um, you know, uh, high school sweethearts feeling love for Julia, and then his like total overwhelming infatuation with Silvia. And his monologues are so much fun to do because you can really feel him being pulled in so many different directions,
Right.
and he doesn't know how. His experience has not taught him how to act responsibly when being pulled by all of these different forces. And so what he ends up doing is just going with the one that is pulling him the most, and allowing that to justify being really terrible to everyone else, that he has those other responsibilities to. Um,
It's interesting because one of the things that this really does bring to mind, and which is very evident in the work that all four of you do in the production, is how young these people are. these are not fully mature adults in any way. None of these people are. These are very, very young people, you know, kind of blundering their way through this tempestuous, almost late adolescent crisis that they've created for themselves. And it's fascinating because one of the things that is very much missing from the play, although it appears in a couple of little instances, but in the broader arc of character development, we don't see the core of any of the parents of these people. You know, we have little glimpses of them, but there aren't any parents in this. This is about four very, very young people. Which is so interesting and so well presented in this production. So Chanel and Emily, I'm eager to ask the two of you, because your characters create their own agency in ways that were not permissible within the social confines of hierarchical Elizabethan society and the observed confines of Verona and Milan that Shakespeare is presenting us. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about the way in which you show the audience that, you know, you're going to find agency regardless, even though it's impermissible. So Chanel, do you want to start about that? We'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of it, like those were concerns. That was like maybe the number one concern, I think, for myself. And I don't want to speak for Emily, but I would guess for Emily when we were at the table, the workshops, because it's very and it's Shakespeare, and it's the Elizabethan period. And for me personally, I do a lot of musical theater as well, and it's actually a very common problem I found with femme-bodied and female characters, having to sort of conquer that. Well, there's not a lot of agency or maybe even substance on the page, and what, as actors and as a creative team, can we bring out of that? Can we bring to this character and to their decisions and sort of make them real people as opposed to sort of plot accessories? And I wouldn't call it difficult, only because I think it is something that we as women run into a lot in this industry. But it was
in this world, perhaps.
Well, you said it. Yeah, and so I think I think for Julia specifically, we get to sort of see her discover that agency. Like that's like kind of her main plot arc throughout, is discovering sort of who she is, what she wants to do, going for it despite what other people might have to say or might think, and then having to kind of discover who she is outside of her relationship with men, which is brand new for her. And the audience gets to go on that journey with her. We talked about how outside of Lance and Speed, she's really the only character that kind of breaks the fourth wall, and kind of goes on this journey of what the heck is going on here? What did I get myself into? Oh, excuse me.
That's okay.
And yeah, so that was a really it's always a fun thing to do, is to go, how do we take this woman and make her a real person off of the page?
Yes. Emily, so it's, you know, so your agency, one of the interesting things about your agency is, in particular in Act 5, so much of it is nonverbal. And that was such a powerful thing. Is, you know, I thought that was almost one of the strongest aspects of this, was the, you know, the nonverbal progress towards a potential resolution that honored your character's age. I thought that was really, I'd love to hear your you know, how you arrived at that and how that feels to do it that way.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny because Silvia in the script does not speak after
Right.
the assault from Proteus. she says, "Oh heaven," and then that's it. And then
That's
there's
it.
pages and pages and pages of text where people are speaking for her. But with the way that we managed to build the rest of that scene, I don't feel like I'm not speaking for the rest of the play. Like I feel like I'm in it. And Eli really gave me a choice as the actor, of whether or not Silvia was gonna go with if we were gonna imply that Silvia did go with Valentine at the end or not. And I allowed myself to be influenced by the way that Tyler decided to build Valentine and the agency that he decided to give Silvia at the end of that play. And then ultimately leading me to decide that, yeah, maybe she does, perhaps.
Yes,
She's gonna take care
yes.
of Julia first. She's a girl's girl. But but yes, no, that was so fun to get to build all of that nonverbal uh action and reaction and communication to where I didn't feel like I had no say in the end of the
Right.
play.
It's very well done. I mean, it really, for those of you who haven't seen the production, it's a very, very strong, it's the strongest Act 5 I've ever seen in a production of this play, and I've seen a number of them. So Tyler, how does, how does Valentine finally get there? I mean, like what how do you deal with Valentine's Act 5 almost bizarre migration, in some ways backwards, but in other ways forwards?
Yeah, the way I've been looking at it, because it's really tough. It's tough to look at Act 5 as its own separate entity, and so I've been using, as soon as Act 1 starts and we have our first conversation with Valentine and Proteus, it's all, I know that it all leads up to that, to that final act. And for me, it's been so important about establishing that this is a man who is just, he doesn't know anything else but opening his full heart to everything. I think, his name is Valentine for reasons that go beyond him just falling in love. I think he's a lover of life and of people. He's positive, and then to a fault. He's charming to a fault.
Right.
He's innocent and wholesome to a fault. He and writing that line of young and naive, but also not being dumb, and I do think he is dumb in the sake of, or in the terms of, just being a young man with not a lot of experience, but wanting to go out and explore the world. And he has ambition, but he doesn't have a direction, but he doesn't care. He's just going to go. And so I think everything that makes Valentine, all the reasons why you want to root for Valentine end up becoming the most dangerous parts of him by the end of it.
Yes. Dangerous to others as well as
dangerous, specifically dangerous to others. Him seeing the best in people becomes his biggest downfall, and it was important for me to establish that that Act 5 is so much about me just wanting everything to be okay, me wanting everyone to be happy. But that just can't be the case, especially in a situation like this.
Yes.
And it sucks because it's the people that I love the most in a situation that no one ever wants to find themselves in. And it was so important for me because I carry the majority of the dialogue after the confrontation. It was so important for me that it all came from other people, specifically Silvia. It was, I don't make these decisions without Silvia. And do I forgive Proteus if I'm not given the go ahead? And so it's really sad because we all know people who are forgiving to a fault. And I think he is, and especially when you incorporate a bond between two men that is more close to brothers than it is friends.
Yes.
It's unbreakable. And that was the hardest part, because you can't approach that ending in a way that makes Valentine, we didn't want to stray away from that. We didn't want to hide away from the fact that his naive, all of his all of the things that you love about him are all the things that you end up kind of being frustrated with by the end. You're just like,
you want to kick him in the rear.
Exactly. And it's just been beautiful to be able to work with specifically these four on that ending, or these three, and Eli being able to really make it about the women's story. It's really about them. And yeah.
So here's a question. Here's a question completely out of left field for each of the four of you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, which is, what happens 2 weeks later? Where are these people 2 weeks after Act 5 has taken place? Brennan, what do you think?
I mean, I hope Proteus is in therapy. I mean, I hope. I mean, that's a really good question. Yeah, there was a version of this that I didn't end up pitching. But like early in the process, I thought about pitching to Eli the idea of that, like, Proteus stays in the woods. That like
interesting.
That Proteus like joins the people from the outlaws that like are still in the forest, because like he just like can't be in society because he's just so like at sea with who he is, and he needs to do like what Valentine was talking about, how you just breed a habit in a man, that like he needs to like be outside and figure his stuff out. But like I didn't end up pitching it because the ending of this production is so not about him.
Right.
And it is so about Julia and Silvia that like he just needs to get off stage so that they can have a final moment.
But that's a great idea for what happens to Proteus 2 weeks later. So Chanel, what about you? What happens to you 2 weeks later?
Yeah, I think Julia stays in Milan for a little while. I think she definitely has this mentor in Silvia now, this friend. And I think I don't think beforehand she's had a friendship like this, in that Silvia is so independent and has that agency and gets to make whatever decisions she wants, and she gets to do like move through the world in whatever way she wants to. And I think Julia stays sort of long enough to sort of absorb that from her and learn how to move through the world on her own and to be her own person. And then she's probably going to go off and figure out who that is.
Interesting. So Tyler, what happens? Where is Valentine 2 weeks later?
I think my heart is with Silvia, and similar to how we've structured the ending. Especially when it comes to Proteus and my relationship with him, it all runs through her. And I think it's 2 weeks later, I think me and Proteus have made amends. I have forgiven him. But I need space, and my new family needs space, as in me and Silvia. Reach out to me to wish me happy birthday or Merry Christmas, but we'll right now we can't be talking. Just know that I forgive you. It's not, that doesn't mean everything is repaired. There's actually, it's the complete opposite. But also knowing that Silvia would not. I mean, if I continue to, you know, be best friends with Proteus and we just go back to normal, I mean, that would break me. And
Yes.
I think there is an irreparable hole in our friendship. But I think I work very hard to make amends as he does, you know, as he tries to do.
So Emily, we come to you now because this is really in some ways the major crux, you know. Is 2 weeks enough time for you to help Velentine grow up? And are you going to be satisfied with that as your life project? Where are you 2 weeks hence?
You know, I hope so. That I feel like that answer was a good answer, and I agree that you know, it's if Valentine is able to see that maybe being idealistic in every single situation uh is not always a good choice. It could put people in danger, it could hurt people. Um then yeah, I think that we're building a lovely home together outside of the tower that I have been locked in for years and years and years. Um, I think that I have started a friendship with Julia. Um, and we're kind of together learning how to be independent because I think that Sylvia has an independent spirit, but has not actually gotten the chance to be independent.
Right.
So, yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion happening with Valentine, and um they are in a state of trying to build a life together and seeing whether or not that's gonna be something that works.
You know, it's so interesting because there's such a contrast. You know, Sylvia in many respects is the most fully developed character in the script. I'll take I'll take my friends, the professionals, word for it. And of course, the first great song that Shakespeare ever wrote, and he wrote many great songs, is Who is Silvia? And there is this enormous focus on Silvia in so many ways. And then Emily, as you pointed out earlier, you know, like in the middle of Act 5, after the attempted rape and the huge fight, Silvia gets no lines whatsoever. She has nothing to say. It's amazing in a sense that, you know, the discontinuity that's kind of inherent in that. And it was, you know, and as I said earlier, I really thought that both on your part and also on Julia's part, the physical acting was so important. You know, both Tyler and Brennan get to say what they're thinking in many respects, although Brennan steps back a little bit in act at the end of Act 5. But with the women, most of it was physical acting, and it was so convincing to the audience. And that really, in a sense, leads me to one of the things that I really wanted to just sort of talk about in the few minutes that we have before we open this up to everybody else's comments and questions and brickbats and hopefully compliments for you guys as well, which are well earned. Which is this, you know, there is this sense about this play. This play is really sort of pregnant with possibilities for Shakespeare's artistic future. You know, the self-conscious villain, the women seeking and finding agency where society does not permit them to have agency on their own. The contrast, it was so interesting. Brennan's idea about, you know, what happens 2 weeks later, that he's going to stay in the forest, is such a powerful idea given the ways in which Shakespeare later develops the contrast between the freedom of the forest and the egalitarian and thoughtful and philosophical freedoms to be found there, as apart from the strictures of and conventions of court life that we see in lots of other plays. And it's just it's a fascinating illustration of the way in which actors can take the script and make it something that's even richer than the extraordinary text that you started working with. And one of the things that was just so striking about this play, and I've been to, lots of SF Shakes performances, is I don't remember another play in which there was the direct level of audience engagement that pops up in every production, every show of Act 5. I mean, the audience has views about what ought to happen and what these characters on the stage ought to do. And what's so striking to me about this is because this goes back to my own decade of work at Shakespeare's Globe in London, and some of the ideas that Mark Rylance, the first artistic director, brought to the Globe's shows, which was that the thing that the Globe brought to our modern theaters is a far deeper understanding of how intimate the relationship between an Elizabethan audience, the groundlings standing in the yard and the lordlings sitting in the benches, and the actors really were, and that it's not just shared light and shared sound. There's an intimacy to these relationships. And Rylance always says that that in many respects, the audience is a character in every Shakespeare play that's performed there at the Globe. And that is totally true for this production. You guys succeeded in, the audience is hooting and engaged in this in ways that I've just not seen, and you don't ordinarily see in a Shakespeare performance. It's a great achievement to have done that, and it is an achievement which, in my view, would have been deeply recognizable and enjoyable to our author. This is what he was writing for, was what you guys have achieved standing in a park in San Francisco in 2025. It's terrific. It really is. So with that, I see Carla.
I was like, you see me here.
Carla is ready to grab the
go.
reins, and let's
Yes.
open this up. But first, before we do that, let me just offer and suggest that we all join in an internet round of applause for these wonderful actors who have just done a terrific job with this production. And we're very grateful for your joining us today. So Carla, over to you and to all of our friends and supporters online.
For those of you who are interested in seeing it, our next stop is Sue Behrman Park this weekend until Saturday, September 21st. And I'm putting that in the chat so you can see it. Something there's a couple of questions about, is Velentine naive in his honesty? I think you've answered that, Tyler. And then, does Proteus see his going with his strongest feeling as a strength? You might have answered that. It's something I do want to pop up for a couple things for folks that don't know. That I've had the privilege of watching these folks go from a script rehearsal to performing, and the camaraderie that they have hanging out, has been lovely to see. And I hope that they've had a great experience and got to meet and have a friendship. But what was surprising to you about working with each other? Because you all seem to get close so quickly as a group, and it was just lovely to watch.
So Brennan, you want to start with that?
No, unmute and talk amongst yourselves. That's the exciting part, Dan. When they talk to each other, let it go. Let the raves go.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the why of it. I mean, I feel like just with the other actors in the room here, like the totally different levels of connected. Like Emily and I have known each other for a while, and are friends outside of the work. And I think at least for me, I was like very excited to finally get to do a full production with you, because we'd done a reading at Berkeley Rep together, but like other than that, hadn't gotten to do a full show. And like Chanel, I just knew like as a fan, because I saw them in Wizard of Oz at ACT, and they absolutely crushed that. And Tyler, I did not know at all and had never seen before day one of the script workshop. So I mean, I don't think there's like a formula to it exactly, but just like, well, we're all nice, I guess.
Yeah, I think all nice and just it's one of those indescribable things that you can't plan and can't create, just a chemistry that um that worked really well, and we all sort of instantly wanted to be hanging out with each other, and we ended
Mhm.
up spending so much time together outside of rehearsal. It was like the only time we weren't together was if we were sleeping. Um, so I don't know, it was just a really beautiful thing, and it made for uh some really free play when it came to exploring this work together.
Yeah, it felt very serendipitous. It really was just sort of immediate, where it's like, oh, these are my people, kind of right away. And again, like just sort of reiterating, I came into it just feeling like, okay, it's my first Shakespeare. Like, it's the first time a lot of people in the Bay Area are going to be seeing me doing anything other than a musical, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to just like really perform well. And it was this group of actors and friends really made it so easy and so safe and so fun, that like I can't even remember what it felt like to be sort of intimidated by this process. Now I'm just like, is perfect. It was great. And I just felt really blessed to be able to work with these people. Like, that's my job, is I get to work with these people. And it's just been a blessing for sure.
So Tyler, what's it like to have a straight shot from SF Shake's summer camp to SF Shake's main stage production?
It's really surreal, because it's been exactly a decade
Since well, no, it's been I was there from 2012 to 2017,
Mhm.
18. And honestly, I would love to tell you that there's this profound like difference between, when I was a kid doing the summer camp and then this. It really is just adult summer camp is what this is. And it's such a beautiful environment, and being able to, it's like, further to that point, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, you meet, some of the most, fun. You meet your people at summer camp, and I've met my people at this summer camp, and we were after a whole 8-hour day, we just wanted to just be with each other, and there was just that instant connection, and it never felt forced. It never felt like, okay, we should get to know each other if we're going to be doing something where it's so reliant on the chemistry. Things just really clicked for us, and yeah, and it's been really strange, because it's a lot of the same feelings that I had in terms of like just the sheer fun and the love that we all feel for each other, and the love that we feel from the audience. It's exactly what I was feeling 10 years ago, and it hasn't changed. And I would love to say that there's this huge difference between the summer camp and the show, but really there isn't. It's just, we're just a little older, but we still have that childlike, wonder. And I mean, there was even one time, I mean, I don't want to go into specifics, but like there was one time where we all hung out, and it was early on, like a few days into rehearsal, and we had a woman approach us before we were like, we knew we were close, we knew we were cool. This woman comes up and approaches us and just starts talking to us about how our energy together was so palpable. She was like, I could feel your guys' energy. And like, we've known each other for, I mean, as a group, we've known each other for a few days. And then she was telling us that we should audition for the next reboot of Friends when like she didn't even know we were actors. She just came up and said that. And so there was something happening very early on, and that hasn't really left us. And so it's been wonderful.
Well, that's that is a wonderful thing for Carla and me and Ray Coots and the other people concerned with the San Francisco Shakespeare Festival to hear, because it really is what we strive for. And of course, it is wonderful that in this particular play, the four of you are all young people in your characters. And you didn't have the burden of playing the ghost of Hamlet's father or somebody else far removed in temporal terms.
Thank you, Emily. Sorry, Emily had to head out. I see your hand raised, Kirk, but before we get to your question, I do want to say, if you all have not had a chance to see this group chemistry in action, please come to the park. We're in Sue Behrman the next 2 weekends until September 21st. It's gorgeous. The ferry building's there. You can grab a very fancy picnic if you would like, and join us in the park. Kirk, what is your question?
Well, certainly one of the main themes of this play is the conflict between homosocial engagement and romantic conflicts when, multiple guys like the same gal, right?
Yeah.
But a secondary theme, I think a very important theme, is forgiveness. As Christians, we're commanded to forgive by Jesus, but also there's the psychological benefits, the letting go of anger, the letting go of revenge, leading to an inner peace, as I think secular psychologists have said. And I just wondered what our actors thought about the forgiveness. Did the Christian concept ever enter their mind? Was it purely the social, guy to guy thing? I'm very interested in what their process of thinking about forgiveness was.
That's a good question. Although I personally, as a human, think that forgiveness is a human trait rather than a secular trait, and it's not tied to any one religion or aspect. But Tyler, Brennan, where are you at?
This is maybe the 4-week question, not even the 2-week question.
I think one thing that was really important for me, especially with our production, was the fact that me and Proteus come from this small Midwestern town, and how growing up in that environment has shaped our friendship, our brotherly bond in such a palpable way, especially with the way that we've kind of built everything. We're coming from a place that is not flashy. It's very simple. The most exciting part about where we grew up was each other, and that's all we had. And so when stuff starts to hit the fan in Act 5, that is really put to the test. But I think so much of my forgiveness, aside from Valentine's incredibly positive and forgiving nature, it comes from our background and our history that has transcended locations, and it started and it developed in a place that was incredibly simple, and it was incredibly where we came from had its charm, and all we really knew was each other. And then we make this migration to this new place, and the world kind of opens up for us. But before that, all we knew was each other and our small town. And I think that really that really kind of shapes where at least Valentine is by the end of the act. It's there's just so much history, not just emotionally and from a friendship standpoint, but from a geographical standpoint
as well.
Yeah.
So Brennan, can you forgive yourself in week 4 post Act 5? Is I think in some ways an interesting iteration of Kirk's question.
I don't know. I mean, I think I think Proteus is so broken at the end of this show. At least the way that I'm playing him is like when he realizes like the sort of weight of what he's done. The line, my shame and guilt confounds me, that like he basically starts having a panic attack because he like doesn't know how to square the things that he has done to these people with his own understanding of himself. And then watching Silvia essentially give Valentine permission to forgive Proteus is, I think, another sort of step for him towards like, wow, all of these people are capable of these like high level acts of kindness and empathy, and who am I in comparison to these people? So I think, those last couple lines that Valentine has about, one feast, one house, one mutual happiness.
Right.
I don't think, for me, my Proteus is buying that. I think
Yes.
when I put my hand on his chest and turn to walk off stage with him, I think what I'm trying to non-verbally say without taking too much stage is like, no, man, it's let's just go. Like
Right.
you're trying to make this better, and it's just not.
And
I don't have a place in the lives of these women.
well, it's interesting, of course, because it's really, in some ways, it's really Chanel and Emily who have the more challenging acts of forgiveness for both of these characters for different reasons, but for both of these male characters, which is also interesting. Carla, I think we seem to be approaching.
It is 1 o'clock. We
our
are
witching
out of
hour.
time. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Tyler, Chanel, Brennan, and Emily, who had to leave for a different engagement. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful for you all to talk about your characters and your journeys. Please, for those of you watching, if you're watching later, feel free, if you're so moved, consider a donation to support our work at sfshakes.org. And please watch this space, because we will, not yet, but we will have more Let's Talk About It, potentially with a season announcement.
Lots coming up, lots of exciting stuff coming up, guys. Lots of exciting stuff. Thanks for joining us. Wonderful, wonderful group of young actors. Thank you so much for your work.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.